Well, guys, this is a very special treat. Joining us on the show for the very first time is a very special guest who's behind such legendary fighters as Nate and Nick Diaz, Gilbert Burns, Jake Shields, and much, much more. It's an honor to welcome Cesar Gracie for the first time to Submission Radio. Cesar, thank you so much for joining us, man.
Thank you, guys. My honor being here. Thank you, guys.
The pleasure is definitely all ours, Cesar. A lot happening lately. Welcome to the show. We were looking at Instagram, and we saw you put up a pretty epic picture of yourself, Jake, Gilbert, Nick, and Nate from back in the day, you know, saying how they came up together. They're still great friends today.
Mm-hmm.
I got to ask, man, how does it feel looking back and, you know, being such an important part of that special group of fighters and almost an era in MMA?
Wow, it's really interesting you're asking me that, because I literally did an interview. The UFC send a bunch of guys out here. They've been interviewing us, so they want to do a special on that exact subject and how it changed the whole MMA landscape and everything. So, yeah, it was definitely a special time, you know, where these guys are very special guys. They kind of found each other in the same roof, and I was able to train them in jiu-jitsu and get them going with the boxing and everything. And it was a really good time. I got to admit, you know, it was some fun stuff for sure.
When you think back to it, does it amaze you just how much you and that group of fighters were able to shape that generation of fighters coming up and that era in the sport?
You know, now that looking back, yeah, it is pretty amazing, you know, because we at the time we were in our own little bubble, if you will. You know, we all lived here in Northern California, and we just kind of lived that life, and we didn't really care what was going on anywhere. We just did our thing. And even traveling the country now and everything, so many people know the stories. They know the past of these guys, and the guys, obviously a couple of them are still fighting and everything. And it's pretty amazing. It's been good for sure.
Well, the amazing thing is, right, that each of them went on to sort of shape MMA in some shape or form. How much do you think the Skrap Pack sort of helped pave the next generation of fighter we see now? And just in general, like, I know some of the guys are still fighting, but what do you think were some of the biggest impacts they made in the sport?
Well, for example, I think let's say like Nick Diaz, his style of fighting, for example. Number one, it really brought boxing to the sport front and center. I think obviously jiu-jitsu for sure. They're all black belts in jiu-jitsu, and that's what I'm known for. But with Nick, it brought that style of boxing, you know, and to this day, I see so many people that actually still copy his style. You know, the hands out, and maybe like some of the bravado. And there's a lot of stories that people don't know, the people that trained with us at the time, like with Ronda Rousey, for example. She had started fighting, but she wasn't in the UFC, and she started training with us. And she kind of got that whole, if you will, her character that she, you know, that really tough girl character after she kind of came to our school, and she used to stay here, you know, and she kind of lived with us for a little bit. And I think she improved some of her skills, but she also improved her, the mentality, I think it was. I was watching TV the other day, and Calvin Kattar was fighting, and I remember the kid from, like, I can't remember how many, it was so many years ago. I think he was 19. I say kid because when I knew him, he was like 19. I think he's in his 30s now. And he said that his time out here with us really completely shaped his, what it was going to take to get him to that level. And he was talking about the stories because he stayed at my house. And I would take him for these insane training sessions. We would, you know, in the morning I'd take him on these crazy runs, and then it was boxing, it was wrestling, it was this. And then I'd take him to the Diaz's where he would have to spar those guys, and they would stay late. So we would be done with everything like at 2 a.m. or something.
Wow.
So you'd come home, you'd be so wiped out. And the next day, guess what? It's the same thing over again and again. And, you know, you have a really good time, but we were really into training hard. And so I do see people copying that, you know, copying things that these guys did. And obviously with the Jake Shields style was more of like with the wrestling and just torturing you when he gets on you. And Jake went on to have so many championships he won and everything in different weight classes. Gilbert Melendez had more of a hurricane style to him. He would just come out and put it all together. He would use his jiu-jitsu not so much for submissions, but his ground and pound, it was like one of the best in the business. So at 145, he was the number one fighter in the world, and then I think he got to number 2 at 155 at one point. So yeah, a lot of people got to pick up different styles from my guys and kind of emulate them, and kind of, you just gotta go for it. But yeah, it was pretty cool to watch for sure.
Do you remember the first time you ever met the Diaz brothers, and what was your first impression of them?
Well, the first time I met them, I want to say Nick was 16 years old, and he was training with one of my brown belts out in Stockton, a great fighter in his own right, Steve Heath. And Steve called me up one day and said, "Hey, I got this guy out here. He's training with me, and he really gets this stuff. You got to meet this guy, Cesar." So it was an affiliate school of ours. So I drove out to Stockton, and I checked out Nick, and I brought one of my tough guys out. His name was David Terrell, who also fought in the UFC.
Yeah.
A great guy in his own right. And I brought David with me and a couple other guys, and they were training with Nick. And Nick, he had such a mind for jiu-jitsu that it was amazing. I mean, he's one of those guys, how do I describe it? Like genius level at that. Maybe everything else in his life was not great. He didn't really like school. He didn't, there were things he just didn't take to, but jiu-jitsu wasn't one of them. That's the thing he took to. And just to watch his brilliance, he didn't have a lot of technique at the moment, but he was learning on the fly. It was so cool. And he became such a awesome grappler in the jiu-jitsu scene here. And then, he started fighting and everything. So yeah, it was neat.
Yeah, man, I'm just thinking you guys really impacted MMA in so many different ways. Like I remember even back in the day, fighters would just take breaks in between their fights and not really train, and then train and you guys were one of the first teams that would just always be in shape, always training, always ready to go. So another impact that you guys had. I'm wondering, like I saw you were hanging with Nick and Nate late last year on your Instagram. You put up a picture like at a barbecue or something. Like what's your relationship like with the brothers now? And are you pretty excited for Nate to be in this position to potentially pay out his contract and move on from the UFC?
Yeah, definitely. I was speaking to Nate yesterday, and he was supposed to come out on Monday. I think it was Monday night. We were all going to train at my gym in Pleasant Hill, Nate. And then Nate kind of canceled, but then what happened was his wife went into premature labor. And so he had a baby yesterday. Was the thing.
Wait, did you say Nick or Nate?
Morning. Nate.
Oh wow, Nate had a baby. Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, right. So he had a just a beautiful little girl. He sent me a picture and everything. And I go, okay, you're excused from training today. You know what I mean? But yeah, he's doing really good. I think you kind of spoke about something about always being ready, and with life, sometimes it's not when you think you need to be ready. You got to be ready when the opportunity presents itself. And that's what happened with Nate. He was ready for the McGregor fight. They called him up. I think he had like less than 2 weeks to get ready for that first fight. He was in Mexico at the time when they first were trying to get a hold of him, just hanging out with Gilbert, doing some stuff. And all of a sudden he got the call. He came back up here. He started, luckily he was already in shape. With Jake Shields, his big break was when he fought Sakurai out in Japan. And this is after when Sakurai was the number two guy in his division. He had only lost to Matt Hughes, I believe. But Jake was ready to go. So they called him up with, I think, same thing, 2 weeks or something. But Jake was ready to go. So Jake went to the fight, won the fight. Nate went out there. He performed really good with McGregor. He ended up winning that fight. And it's about year long. You're always in shape,
How is he look? I know he skipped training the other day. Good reason too, considering he had a baby. But how's he looking so far in training? And I'm wondering if you'll be cornering him for this Khamzat fight.
I don't know if I'm going to corner him or not. We haven't really discussed that, and sometimes cornering is a little nerve wracking. So, sometimes I don't even like to corner, to be honest with you. But and So if he needs me there, I definitely will do it. And I think he'll be ready to go. He's got probably one of the toughest mentalities growing up with Nick. He's just got this. He never quits. He's ready to fight, and you can't. If there were no rounds in MMA, I mean, he just doesn't stop. He'd keep going until he beats you. You got to kill him, type of a thing. So this is an interesting fight for sure. I can tell you, it wasn't on my list. I was trying to have him fight Chandler, actually, because Chandler wanted to come up in weight, and I said, man, this is an exciting guy. Look, he's going to go for it. Nate's an exciting fighter. Let's have this fight happen. Nate wanted to fight Poirier because they've had a feud they were supposed to fight before. And then, so I kind of the UFC ended up putting the other fighter in, and I thought, oh, the guy used to fight at 185. He dropped down, he's 170 now. And Nate is a 155 pounder who just doesn't want to cut weight. Pretty much is why he wants to fight at 170.
Yeah.
It was a weird matchup for sure, but being 5 rounds and everything, I think Nate can bring him into deep water and hopefully pull something out that'll be good.
Yeah, it's an interesting sort of storyline and narrative, isn't it, Cesar? Because a lot of fans feel like, and I want to get your thoughts on this, that this is the UFC's way of trying to sort of punish Nate on the way out of the company and trying to get some shine onto a guy who they feel like could be the future of the company on his way out. How do you feel about the fans sort of having this notion going into this main event?
Obviously I'm not privy to what the UFC is talking about, but what you just described is exactly how I feel about it. So what the fans are thinking is, it's no secret when you want to leave the UFC, they want to make sure you're not going to leave as a winner. They want to make sure that you're not going to help another organization out, is what I'm thinking. So the fights that made sense with Poirier and, there's a lot of other fights that made a lot more sense. They said no to. And I know Poirier wanted that fight too. So why not give those guys that fight? It was supposed to happen before. It made a lot of sense. And or someone like Chandler or something like that. But yeah, I pretty much feel like what you guys are talking about too.
Dana White was sort of was doing interviews and some scrums recently, the Dana White Contender Series, and obviously he was asked about this fight and about the notion that this is kind of like a way to devalue Nate on the way out. And he was saying like, oh look, the Diaz brothers are just very different. I don't think he said difficult, but he said different to work with in terms of like setting up fights and negotiating, things like that. He said there's a lot of things that happen that, are just kind of almost exclusive to Diaz brothers and dealing with them. Do you mind if I ask you, I know you're not necessarily in the management position, but what is it like dealing with the Diaz brothers when trying to set up a fight? Is it really as difficult as Dana White's trying to make it sound? Like, what's your experience been like?
I mean, I just don't think they're not stupid guys when it comes to stuff like that. I am actually doing management stuff for Nick right now, but I think they know their worth. I think they came to realize that they put a lot of people want to watch them fight, and they came to that conclusion. And I think they realize, when they see these other guys fighting for millions of dollars versus what's that, the Paul guy,
Jake Paul,
yeah.
Or when they see something like that and they're thinking, wait a minute, why aren't we making big money? Like these boxers do, even like big time boxers, how much money they make. And they go, there's something wrong here with the organization making the most amount of money and them getting the small bit of money. Like if you look at Nate's last fight, I mean, I went to the fight and it was, everybody was there was to see that fight. Nate versus, Leon Edwards and everything. It was like they wanted to see that fight. It was amazing, the roar. And the fight afterwards just wasn't a big fight. I'm sorry, it wasn't. Compared to Nate, people were even leaving. So, and that's no disrespect. I'm just saying that these guys realize their worth, and they're really not getting paid their worth, is what it is. They know that. So they're just not wanting to to be company men, if you will. Like, oh, whatever these guys say, or Dana or whoever, whatever they tell us to do is what we're going to do, and we'll just keep having our, it doesn't make sense. They're not dumb guys. And so I don't think it's difficult to work with. I think it's difficult to manipulate. They're difficult to manipulate is what it is.
After this fight for Nate, he's done with the UFC and he's going to move on to other things. But I just want to know your thoughts, Cesar. Like, he's done so much for the UFC, and in the UFC, he's had so many classic moments, from the Ultimate Fighter to his run and to all his epic rivalries. Ultimately, when you look back on it, though, what have you thought of the way that he's been treated by the organization in his run with them?
Well, again, like I said, in fighting, I get it, because these promotions are trying to make the most amount of money and paying the least amount of money to the fighters. That's how they increase their profits. So there is that. And there's not really a union. There's not really all this stuff going. And I'm not advocating a union. I don't know. I'm saying you can. I think they should have been in a different position for everything. As famous as they are, as much as that they've done, I kind of agree with them on I look and I go, yeah, these guys put they made people a lot of money over there, these corporate types and everything. And I just think they should have had a bigger share, because they give their heart and soul to fighting. They get out there and it's like, they give it all, you know what I mean? And they're entertaining guys. They go 100%. They love the fans. They do everything. And I've always thought they should be in a much better position. If they were famous boxers like that, I mean, they'd have way more money and whatever than they do than the UFC. And not obviously, they're getting paid pretty good, I'm sure, especially Nate, but nowhere where it should have been, no, that's what I think.
Yeah, and I think that goes for a lot of fighters on the roster. It's crazy how, like, you look at the biggest and top stars, and they almost have all had feuds with the UFC. And Ngannou's having it now, GSP, Randy Couture back in the day, Conor McGregor, Nate Diaz. I mean, basically anyone who's anyone has had disagreements, to say the least, regarding money and the UFC. I want to go sort of back to this fight, Nate against Khamzat. From a coaching perspective, what do you think is one of the keys to sort of taking Khamzat into deep waters, and what's something that you see in him that you guys feel like you might be able to expose or take advantage of?
I think on the stand-up, he's a young kid. Khamzat's a young guy. He's got a lot of energy. He's very strong. He's got very good wrestling to take it to the ground. I think what I saw in his last fight is he was taking Gilbert Burns down, but he after a while he realized it was kind of dangerous down there, and the fight ended up being more of a stand-up fight than anything. I think Nate actually has better hands than Burns does, and I think another thing is Khamzat, he comes at you with a lot of passion, and he wants to finish you. He's already said this is going to be Nate's funeral, I think it was, so he's putting the pressure on himself to finish this fight pretty quick. And if he comes out hard like that, I think that'll work into Nate's favor, to be honest with you. I think Nate has to bring him into deep water and has to, obviously got to be in shape to do that. Nate's always in shape. Standing up, I give the edge to Nate. On the ground, I think Nate's a better grappler, but you're fighting a younger guy that's strong. It's definitely a tough fight, but there's ways to win this fight.
I wonder, we saw Khamzat when he was fighting Gilbert Burns, he kind of struggled to stay on his game plan, and that sort of almost cost him in the fight. Do you anticipate that, Nate, the fact that he brings a different level of sort of mental pressure with him talking throughout the fight, with the level of, fan support that he brings when they're out there, the level the crowd's going to be going? Do you imagine that might be a hurdle for Khamzat in trying to stay on his game plan and not get overexcited over these 5 rounds and make mistakes?
Yeah, it definitely could. But like I said, he's put all the pressures on him for this fight. People, the expectations on him are huge. They're already talking about him fighting for the title against Usman. So there's a lot of pressure on him. And if he has a bad showing, it's really going to hurt him more than anything else. So I think there's pressure on him to win convincingly and make a statement. And I think with Nate, there's not as much pressure on him. And Nate is Nate. And we're pretty much almost like in a similar situation when they brought Nate in for the McGregor fight,
Yeah.
In certain ways. Here's our superstar McGregor. He's the next greatest thing. He's going to go right through Nate. And then Nate kind of showed him that, that this necessarily might not happen. So, yeah, I'm thinking the pressure's on Khamzat on this one.
Well, yeah, I can't wait to see. And I think you mentioned it as well. Like with Nate, he doesn't necessarily have to win the whole fight. Even if he wins a couple of rounds in the fans' eyes, that's going to be a big win. Just like with the Leon Edwards fight, like a lot of people felt like that one moment sort of dominated their memory of the fight. So the pressure is on Khamzat. I'm very interested to see how that goes. I want to
just quickly, before we talk about Nick Diaz, and sorry to interrupt, for anybody that actually wants to go to UFC 279 and see Nate Diaz take on Khamzat in person, and maybe you don't live in Las Vegas, and maybe you're not within walking or driving distance to T-Mobile Arena, you're gonna have to obviously fly there. Well, you want to save some money. You don't want to pay top dollar for flights. So a cheeky little hack you can use is change the geolocation on your computer to, a different country. And then that way you can actually save money on flights. I've done this before using our good friends at NordVPN. When we went to, I think it was the McGregor Cowboy card. We had to book all the company flights for Submission Radio, for Dennis, myself, our videographer. And I don't know how it happened, but we ended up paying for, I think it was like US currency, but we ended up getting, or the amount was in US currency, but we ended up getting it in Australian dollars because we used a VPN. So if you want to save money on flights and just on other things in general, there are different things that you can get from different countries if you just change your geolocation. For example, Mexican Netflix, or if you pay for Netflix and your computer thinks that you're in Mexico, you will actually save money. I don't live in Mexico, although as fun as that would be, but you can make your computer think that you are in Mexico by switching your VPN with NordVPN. Not only that, but it protects you and your data when you're surfing the internet. Your internet service provider sees everything that you do, even if you use incognito mode. With the VPN, your internet service provider cannot track any of your online activity, the things you download, the things you browse, and they've got the real-time threat protection as well, which keeps you protected, especially all your information such as credit cards and all that kind of stuff. Because let's be honest, we all have that stuff saved in our Google Chrome or Safari or Firefox. So NordVPN has you covered in every single aspect. Isn't that right, Dennis?
That's right, man. And let's be honest, we're not going to be jumping on our computer every time we need to buy something. And NordVPN has one of the best apps when it comes to your phone. So whether you're using your desktop, laptop, or your phone, know that you're going to be covered with NordVPN and their exclusive special deal to all the Submission Radio listeners. You guys can click the link in the description below or go to nordvpn.com/submission. Get a huge discount plus one additional month for free. And by the way, it's completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. Try it on today and change your life for the better thanks to Nord. And guys, I just want to quickly say as well, I mean, there are some big fights happening in the UFC coming up. I was just kind of browsing with our friends at MyBookie, where, by the way, if you guys sign up with the code word submission, you could double your first deposit. That's game-changing stuff. But I'm just looking at some odds right here. Some huge fights coming up for all the fans here in Australia and New Zealand. What about Marvin Vettori, who's a plus 177 versus Robert Whittaker, minus 232. Tai Tuivasa, plus 393. And Cyril Gane, minus 588. All the odds are ready for all the big fights. And maybe you're smart. Maybe you sign up to MyBookie today, and before things start getting crazy, maybe you can lock in some awesome odds. I don't know. I'm just putting it out there. It's double your first deposit when you sign up with code submission. Go to MyBookie right now and secure yourself that bag as we prepare to go into the end of the year here all over the world, Cass.
Yeah, that's right. Make some money of Tai Tuivasa. Also, I know our good friends in the States and Canada and in Mexico, it's summer over there. So you want to roll into summer with that smooth sack summer thanks to our good friends at Manscaped with Lawnmower 4.0, the pound for pound greatest grooming tool in the world. You can be a black belt in ball shaving and keep your junk smooth as eggshells with 7,000 RPM power motor, the ceramic blade, and the skin-safe technology, so you don't have to worry about cutting one of the boys off. It's got the LED light so you can see what you're doing. It's waterproof. I like to just leave mine in the shower other than when we're doing these reads, and I do it for everything. I do it for my facial hair, I do it for the boys downstairs, and I do it to shave my head as well. And I can do it all nice and easy, and then when I'm done in the shower, all the hair just, goes in the drain. I can move on with my life. I don't have to use any cables or worry about cleaning up the mess like I used to when I had like 3 different shavers and head shavers, etc., etc. The Performance Package 4.0 comes with the Crop Preserver and the Crop Reviver Bald Toner and Deodorant. It comes with also the Weed Whacker Ear and Nose Hair Trimmer, free bag, free underwear, free gifts. What's not to love? Isn't that right, Dennis?
Yeah, man, it's a real game changer. You guys can get 20% off right now and free shipping with a code word submission. Honestly, it's a life hack that will change your life for the better. Jump onto Manscaped today and do it now. And by the way, if you're using Manscaped, if you're making money at MyBookie, if you're saving money with NordVPN, make sure to tag us in your socials. We'll be happily resharing our fans, listeners, and friends who are saving money thanks to some of these great companies working with Submission Radio. A really fun time right now at Submission Radio with some of these great deals happening right now. But Cesar, I just want to talk and sort of touch on what's next for Nick before we let you go. I really appreciate your time as well. But I know back in April, you mentioned on Instagram to look for Nick to fight by the end of this year. I'm just wondering, was that the plan? And ultimately, why didn't it come together?
Well, I'm looking at probably the early part of 2023. So I'll give you guys, I really haven't talked about this, but I'll tell you guys what's going on with Nick. So he went into that fight, and his neck was pretty messed up. Robbie's a great, tough fighter and everything, and Nick was doing great. And then you kind of see Nick kind of fading as the fight wore on. So Nick had an operation very recently here.
Oh, wow.
7 weeks ago. So he had two of the discs had ruptured in his neck before the fight. So he was having numbness of the hands. That's why he didn't make the 170. He fought at 185. He just couldn't. It was impossible to train. He just didn't have any strength. He didn't have what you're used to, the Nick Diaz. He just didn't have it. So we were able to go, and he got an operation, and he put the titanium discs in his neck. So he's feeling great from that right now, and it's like we're getting the old Nick back, which is really good. So now that that's happened, we're waiting for the doctors. He's got another appointment, I think, in next month, and then he should be cleared to start his hard training again. Because right now he can only run and hit the pads and everything. But he definitely wants to fight. And the UFC, I've been in contact with them. They just actually called me the other day asking about Nick, and there's some pretty cool fight options that are in front of us.
Man, I had a couple of surgeries in the last couple of months, but those are absolute Mickey Mouse compared to what Nick had with the neck. That's crazy.
Yeah.
I guess the question is, like, why fight through something like that when it's that bad? Why even fight Robbie Lawler?
It was kind of a tough situation. Nick hadn't fought in years, and there was just a lot of weird stuff going on in his life. He had, me and him, Stockton, the whole Northern California thing. Well, he had kind of moved to Los Angeles, Vegas, and everything. Mm. Probably got wrapped up with people he shouldn't have been getting wrapped up with. People that, he's a simple guy. If people, hey, I'm your friend, that type of thing. It's that story. You can kind of go down the rabbit hole a little bit. And I think that's what happened with Nick. So we had to bring him back up. And this fight, when I came into it, had already been set. It was like, hey, this is the fight, and this is what's going to happen. It's Robbie Lawler. And I think they wanted him to fight Khamzat back also, which was kind of weird because we didn't even know who that guy was. So it was like, well, who is that? The fans don't really know him. I think he had like three or four fights or something. So then what happened was, okay, well, you know what? Basically Nick was like, if I'm going to lose, I'm going to lose to Robbie Lawler because he respects Robbie Lawler. And that's why after the fight, he said, I think I probably had that coming. It was just like, if you're going to lose, you lose to a veteran, a warrior, a guy that Nick had to pretty much take that fight. There was a lot of things weighing in on him. What people don't know is that the commission in Vegas was still demanding their money that from remember the marijuana test that he didn't pass.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so this is a new thing for you guys too, but even though it's legal, they said you still owe us that 75,000, I think, or it was some insane amount. It was like, what? You still have to pay it, even though it's legal now. When that happened, it wasn't, and so you're gonna have to deduct it from your fight purse, and Nick really hadn't signed the best contract in the world, and so what happened was they said, we'll pay you more money, but you have to fight this fight here, okay, and on this date, or that. It was the thing. It was like, if you don't take that fight, you're almost going to fight for free. By the time, obviously people, that's not a secret. He had some tax issues in the past. He had to pay that fine, which it was just you had to do it. It was like, well, Nick, he had his back on the wall, and it was one of those unfortunate things where he had to fight, and that's it, and that's what happened. It was one of those things in life, and he manned up and he did it. He looked great that first round, part of the second, and then you started, he did better than I thought he was going to do, because literally, I can tell you, Nick's training. He probably, before, the guy who trains daily like a maniac, he runs triathlons, and I would take him to the gym and he'd do a little thing. He goes, I can't. And he's a man. I never knew what was that wrong with him, So after the fight and everything, we kept looking for what's going on, because he passed his pre-fight stuff. And finally we got these MRIs on his neck, and the guy is like, the doctor said, look, I cannot believe you just fought. You shouldn't be walking. It was like, this is insane. These guys were. So the UFC did on his insurance thing whatever they paid for his operation. He went to the same place where I think Ozzy Osbourne, the singer, just had it rated on. He went to the same place in Los Angeles.
Nice.
Yeah, and got that operation, and they took out the old discs, 2 of them. They cut you in the neck right here. They go in, they pulled out the disc, they put titanium discs in, and now the bone has to fuse with that, and it's a process. There's been a couple of fighters actually that have had that operation. Usually it's 1 disc. Nick had 2. So that's why he fought, hurt, and he had his back up against the wall. And it is what it is. So.
First of all, Cesar, appreciate you telling us that. That's really good to know, and it's good because obviously, like, in the lead up to the Robbie Lawler fight, obviously Nick was saying that he didn't want to be there and he didn't want to be fighting, so it had people very, very puzzled and wondering, like, why is that? What is the motivation now for him to fight? Like, have all the taxes and debts been cleared? I guess a lot of people will be wondering, all right, what is this pre-fight lead up going to look like? Yeah.
So Nick his thing isn't so much the fighting, like I think he's even done interviews where he doesn't like the fight game, if you will. Nick's a martial artist. He loves competition. He's a martial artist, so he likes that part of it. He likes the part where he's in there and he's exchanging his skill and trying to beat the guy. That's who Nick is. But the stuff that comes with it, he just hates. Hey, you're going to have to go fly and do this interview, and like with the GSP thing when he had to, he didn't go to Toronto or whatever. It was a media day. There were no fans there. It's like you have to go talk to some reporters in Toronto, I think it was. And he's like, I'm not going to go. They can call me, if they want to talk. He hates that type of stuff. But he does enjoy competing. He does enjoy being a martial artist. And if he can do things on his terms like that, then he loves it. And so that's where he's at. And so he does want to fight again. He feels like, especially now, I think he feels like he has something to prove. So that's why, for me, I don't care if he ever fights again. It's like, hey man, go, because he's an amazing teacher. There's all kinds of stuff he can do. But he wants to do it for him. So that's where we're at.
Appreciate the insight, Cesar. Final question from us, and we'll wrap it up because I know you're a busy guy. Now that Nate is on his way out of the UFC, it looks like it's going to be the end of this Conor McGregor Nate Diaz feud for quite some time. But I'm wondering, do you potentially see Nick and Conor McGregor meeting at welterweight in the future? Because on paper, the feud is there, and that seems like possibly one of the biggest fights that Conor McGregor could sort of choose at this point, and one of the most fan-friendly sort of blockbusters that the UFC could throw.
You're talking about the trilogy, right?
Yeah, because Nate's going to be out, so he's not going to be able to have the trilogy. Do you see a potential where Nick Diaz could potentially fight Conor McGregor next year, or do you think it's Nate's trilogy and it's something that they wouldn't want to sort of cross over?
Oddly enough, me and my personal point of view on that is that's the fight I would see. I would love to see Nick and McGregor fight 100%, because I think it would be insane. It would be great, you know. I think they both have respect for each other and their skills and everything, and I think it would be like an amazing fight. I do. But Nick is such a loyal guy to his brother, to Nate, that he looks at that as Nate's fight, and he does not want to step on his toes. Now, if Nate turned to him and go, hey, look, I'm never going to fight that guy type of a thing, then Nick would definitely do it. But I would like to see Nate fight him for sure. I think a trilogy makes sense, and I think Nate leaving and then they would have to pay him what he's worth to come back. So I think it's a smart move, because the offers coming in for Nate from other organizations, from very famous boxers, by the way, have been calling in to fight Nate when he's out and offering a lot of money to do it. You know, very well-known boxers, you know, retired one.
Like who? We've obviously got Jake Paul. Who else?
Now, I don't even consider Jake Paul a boxer. He's a tough kid. He's got a good punches hard, but we're talking people that actually did something in boxing, you know. And I don't want to say right now, you know, because I just don't want to. I don't know if I'm at liberty to be honest with you. But let's just say he'll have his dance card full for sure. I mean, I think people know his worth, you know. And if he wants to fight a Jake Paul or whoever, hey, great, you know, to make some money and do whatever he's doing. But I think if I had a crystal ball, and you know, and Nate hasn't told me this, so I'm not saying that, but I could see him coming back to the UFC on better terms for him in the future. If doing his thing, and then, hey, look, now if you're really going to pay me, I'll go fight McGregor or whoever else you guys want me to fight, type of a thing. And the McGregor fight makes a lot of sense for everybody, I think.
And a McGregor fight, even in a boxing match, finishing that trilogy in a boxing match, could potentially have, that's a new wrinkle to the fight that fans haven't seen yet, something exciting. So I'm curious, Cesar, so you're saying it's far from a done deal that Nate's first boxing match will be Jake Paul when he leaves the UFC, from what you're sort of hearing?
From what I'm hearing, you know, I mean, yeah, you know, I think even Nate said something like that to Dana White. I don't know. That's what I heard. I asked Nate, because I don't even talk about stuff like that. It's like we talk about, let's go train, let's go do this, let's go to the restaurant after, you know, whatever. But you know, yeah, you know, I'm sure he's going to do what's right for him and his family, is what I'm thinking. And if that's the fight, then that's going to be the fight. I mean, can you imagine that'd be a huge fight to build for the Jake Paul people? I don't think anyone's really beaten that guy up yet, right? So
and his last fight just fell out of Madison Square Garden, so he's seemingly struggling for the right opponent. It seems like Nate would just be a perfect feud for him to make some money. So very interesting stuff.
100%, that would be it. But then again, he's going to be competing with these other guys that want to fight Nate also. So, you know, right now Nate's got that fight in front of him, and that's the one we're focused on. Is how it is for right now, though.
All right. Well, we'll let you go, Cesar. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us and share some stories and some insight. You know, as obviously like fans from back in the day, it is a huge honor for us to chat with somebody like yourself who helped shape some of our favorite eras of MMA. Make sure to follow Cesar on Instagram at Cesar Gracie BJJ, And if you're in the US looking for training, make sure to check out his academies in Pleasant Hill or Brentwood, and check out GracieFighter.com. Huge honor for us. Thank you so much for your time, Cesar.
Hey, great talking to you guys. Hope to do it in the future. Thank you, guys.